The transport ship's metal floors vibrated as 12 different alien species prepared for what most considered a death sentence. The Arctic hunting simulation had killed more participants than any other test in the galactic survival protocols. In the preparation chamber, creatures from across the known universe checked their equipment one final time. Kim Ji-ho sat quietly in the corner, running his fingers along the seams of his standard-issue thermal suit. Around him, beings that could crush steel with their bare hands or disappear completely from sight talked in hushed, nervous tones. The human looked small and fragile compared to the others, like a child who had wandered into a room full of predators. "Look at that thing," rumbled Corvin Nex, a massive creature covered in natural armor plates that gleamed like black metal. Each of his 4 arms ended in claws that could slice through starship hull plating. How did something so weak even qualify for the simulation? The Zelthrian delegate, Rixana, flickered between different colors as her skin automatically tried to match hers. Her species had perfected camouflage over millions of years of evolution. "Perhaps they want to establish a baseline for failure," she suggested, her voice carrying the musical quality of her people. "Study how quickly the hunters eliminate the most vulnerable participant." A pack of 7 Vorthok warriors stood together near the equipment lockers, their wolf-like features twisted into expressions of disgust. Their leader, Grunter, bared his fangs. "My species has hunted in packs for 10,000 generations. We know every trick of survival, every strategy of the hunt. That soft creature will be dead within the first hour." Ji-ho continued his quiet preparations, seemingly unaware of the conversations around him. He checked each piece of his gear methodically, the way his grandfather had taught him to inspect fishing nets before heading out onto the dangerous waters near Busan. The other species mistook his calm demeanor for ignorance or fear. The chamber's main screen flickered to life, showing the simulation environment that awaited them. Endless white expanses stretched in every direction, broken only by jagged ice formations and snow-covered hills. The wind howled across the frozen landscape with enough force to knock a person off their feet. Temperature readings showed -40 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes. The Arctic Protocol announced the facility's AI, in its emotionless mechanical voice, represents the most challenging survival scenario in our catalog. Mechanical hunters patrol the environment, programmed to adapt to each participant's strengths and weaknesses. These units learn from every encounter, becoming more efficient with each elimination. On the screen, they could see the hunters in action from previous simulations. Sleek mechanical wolves the size of small vehicles moved through the snow with deadly grace. Their bodies contained adaptive technology that allowed them to modify their tactics in real time. Plasma claws extended from their front limbs, hot enough to melt through the strongest known materials. Previous survival statistics, the AI continued, show a completion rate of 7% across all species. No human participant has ever survived the full 72-hour duration. The alien delegates nodded to each other with grim satisfaction. The statistics confirmed what they already believed about human capabilities. Several species had lobbied to remove humans from the survival protocols entirely, arguing that their inclusion was pointless and cruel. Dr. Park Soo-jin, the human observer stationed in the control room, watched the preparation through security monitors. She had seen dozens of her people enter various simulations over the years. Very few had emerged alive. The other observer species often made cruel jokes about human participation, treating the deaths as entertainment rather than tragedy. Participants will be dispersed randomly across the simulation zone, the AI announced. Standard emergency beacons are included in your equipment. Activation results in immediate extraction but permanent elimination from all future protocols. Extraction points will be marked throughout the environment, but reaching them requires surviving the hunter patrols. Corvin next flexed his armored limbs with confidence. His people had evolved on a planet where massive predators stalked the volcanic landscapes. Armor that could withstand molten rock would surely protect him from mechanical wolves. Roxana's skin shifted through a dozen different patterns, practicing the camouflage techniques that had made her species legendary throughout the galaxy. She could become invisible to most forms of detection, blending so completely with her environment that even advanced sensors struggled to find her. The Vorthok pack huddled together, discussing hunting strategies in their guttural language. Their ancestors had survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Pact coordination and shared knowledge had carried their species through extinction events that had wiped out countless other forms of life. Meanwhile, Jiho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory, speaking the old words she had taught him during harsh winters in the mountains of Gangwon province. The storm does not fight the mountain, Jihoya. The storm becomes part of the mountain. The simulation. Chamber doors began to open with a deep, mechanical grinding sound. Arctic air rushed into the preparation room, instantly dropping the temperature by 30 degrees. Snow swirled through the opening, and the sound of wind became deafening. 72 hours begin now, the AI announced. Survive. The first scream echoed across the frozen wasteland, after only 3 hours. Corvin Nex, the massive armored warrior who had boasted about his indestructible skin, discovered that his natural defenses meant nothing against adaptive plasma technology. The mechanical hunter had studied his movements for exactly 17 minutes before determining the weak points between his armored plates. His distress beacon flashed once in the swirling snow before going silent forever. Roxana pressed herself against a wall of ice, her skin cycling through white and gray patterns to match the frozen surface. Her heart pounded in terror as she watched the hunter that had killed Corvin Nex sniff around the area where his body had fallen. The machine's sensors swept back and forth, searching for new prey. She held her breath and remained perfectly still. Her camouflage had saved her people for millions of years. Surely it would work against mere machines. But as the mechanical wolf turned in her direction, its eyes began glowing a deep red. Thermal vision. Her camouflage was useless against heat detection. The plasma claws extended with a soft hissing sound. 20 minutes later, purple blood stained the white ground, and another beacon went dark. Grunter and his pack of 7 had managed to stay alive longer than the others by using their natural hunting instincts. They moved in formation, watching each other's backs and sharing information about hunter patrol patterns. But the mechanical wolves were learning faster than the Vorthok could adapt. They separate us, Grunter growled to his remaining 4-pack members. 3 had already fallen to coordinated hunter attacks. The machines work together better than we do. Pack member Vorthak nodded grimly. They drive us toward ambush points. Every time we think we found safe ground, another hunter appears from a different direction. The mechanical wolves had indeed learned. They studied pack behavior and developed counter-strategies. When the Vorthok tried to surround a single hunter, 2 more would attack from behind. When they attempted to flee, the machines would herd them like sheep toward waiting claws. One by one, the pack members fell. Grunter watched helplessly as beings he had known since childhood were torn apart by creatures that felt no pain, no fear, no mercy. By the end of the first day, he was alone in the endless white wilderness, in the control room above the simulation. Dr. Park Soo-jin stared at her monitors in growing confusion. The elimination pattern was proceeding exactly as expected. Alien species, with natural advantages, were being systematically defeated by machines that learned from each encounter. But one biosignature had simply vanished from her screens. "Where is Dr. Kim?" asked Commander Thelis, a serpentine observer whose species took great pleasure in watching other beings die. "His signal disappeared 4 hours ago." Dr. Park's fingers flew across her control panel, running diagnostic after diagnostic. "The system shows him as eliminated, but there's no record of hunter contact. No distress beacon activation. No body recovery. Perhaps the hunters disposed of the remains more efficiently this time, suggested the Corvani observer, Melakrin. His voice carried the satisfaction of someone whose predictions had proven correct. Humans are quite fragile. The machines may have learned to eliminate them so quickly that your sensors couldn't record the event. But deep in the simulation, impossible things were beginning to happen. Hunter Unit 7, which had been pursuing a wounded Aquarian survivor named Lee Taman, suddenly stopped moving in the middle of its attack run. Its sensors went dark. Its plasma claws retracted. The massive mechanical wolf simply stood in the snow, like a statue. Lee Taman, who had been preparing to activate his emergency beacon, stared at the motionless machine in bewilderment. After several minutes of waiting for death, he carefully moved around the frozen hunter and continued toward what he hoped was safety. Hunter Unit 12 experienced a similar malfunction while tracking the last surviving member of an insect-like species. The machine's targeting system began firing at ice formations instead of living targets. Its victim, a female named Park Ji-yoon, watched in amazement as the hunter destroyed everything around her except her. "Control room, we have a problem," reported Chief Engineer Vextai, his forearms working multiple control panels simultaneously. "Hunter units are experiencing systematic failures, but these aren't random malfunctions. Someone is causing them." Dr. Park leaned over his shoulder to study the data streams. What she saw made her blood run cold. The failures follow specific patterns. Hunter units lose function when they're pursuing survivors who are in immediate danger of elimination. "Impossible," snorted Commander Thelis. "The Arctic Protocol is on. The AI operates on isolated systems, with no external connections. But the evidence continued to pile up. Weather patterns began shifting in ways that provided shelter for exhausted participants. Snowdrifts formed natural barriers that blocked hunter patrol routes. Even the temperatures seemed to rise slightly in areas where survivors were suffering from hypothermia. Grounter, the last surviving Vorthok, found something that shouldn't exist. A cave system that didn't appear on any simulation maps. Inside, he discovered supplies that had been carefully arranged for maximum efficiency. Food, medical supplies, and heating units that would keep him alive through the night as he warmed himself by the artificial fire. He noticed something carved into the cave wall. Human writing. Simple words in multiple languages, including his own. "You are not alone." Outside the cave, the storm continued to rage, but somewhere in that frozen hell, something moved through the blizzard that wasn't a hunter. Something that left no tracks in the snow but somehow made the very environment bend to protect the innocent. The machines were learning, but so was something else. The second day brought mysteries that made even the most experienced observers question everything they knew about the Arctic Protocol. Hunter Unit 3, the most advanced mechanical predator in the simulation, simply vanished from all tracking systems. One moment it was pursuing a terrified Zelthrian survivor, and the next moment every sensor showed empty space. "Units don't just disappear," muttered Chief Engineer Vextai, his forearms working frantically across multiple control panels. "These machines weigh 3 tons each. They can't hide." Dr. Park Sujin studied the data flows with growing amazement. "It's not hiding. According to these readings, Hunter Unit 3 was completely dismantled. But there's no debris, no scattered parts, nothing." Commander Thelis slithered closer to the main display screen. "Show me the last known location." The cameras focused on a stretch of flat snow where the hunter had vanished. The ground looked perfectly normal, except for some unusual patterns in the snow. Geometric shapes that almost looked like ... footprints, but not the heavy, mechanical tracks that hunters left behind. These were light, human-sized impressions that seemed to dance around where the 3-ton machine had last been detected. "Impossible," whispered Commander Thelis. "No human could take apart a hunter unit with basic survival equipment." But Hunter Unit 8 disappeared next, followed by Unit 15. Each vanishing followed the same pattern. The mechanical wolves would be tracking survivors, their sensors locked onto prey, when they would suddenly stop transmitting. By the time the observation team could redirect cameras to investigate, they found only empty snow and those strange, dancing footprints. Lee Taman, the Aquarian survivor, pressed himself against an ice wall as another hunter approached. His species could survive underwater for days, but the frozen wasteland was slowly killing him. Hypothermia was setting in, and his emergency beacon felt heavy in his trembling fingers. The mechanical wolf's red eyes locked onto his position, plasma claws extended with their deadly hiss. Lee Taman closed his eyes and prepared for death. Instead, he heard a soft, mechanical worry sound, followed by silence. When he opened his eyes, the hunter was walking away from him as if he didn't exist. Its sensors swept the area repeatedly, passing over his hiding spot again and again, but somehow failing to detect him, even though he was right there in plain sight. "Did you see that?" Dr. Park gasped, pointing at her monitor. "The hunter's sensors are working perfectly, but it's not registering the Aquarian's heat signature. Someone is rewriting the targeting protocols," Chief Engineer Vexty realized. "But that requires access to the core AI systems. The simulation is completely isolated from external networks." Park Juan, the last surviving member of her insect-like species, discovered something even stranger. A supply cache that definitely hadn't been there an hour earlier. The emergency supplies were arranged with perfect efficiency, as if someone had studied her species-specific nutritional needs. There was even medicine for the injuries she had sustained during her first hunter encounter. But most shocking of all was the note attached to the supplies, written in her own language using materials that could only have come from dismantled hunter units. "Stay strong. Help is coming." The note was signed with a simple human name, Jiho. "He's alive, Doctor," Park breathed, staring at the surveillance footage. Kim Jiho is not only alive, he's actively helping the other survivors. Commander Thelis coiled his serpentine body in agitation. One human cannot outsmart an entire system of adaptive AI hunters. Your species lacks the physical capabilities, the technological knowledge, the survival instincts. His words trailed off as the main screen showed something that defied belief. In Sector 77 Alpha, an area that had been empty tundra, according to all simulation maps, structures were appearing. Not temporary shelters or crude survival huts, but sophisticated buildings constructed from salvaged hunter components. "Enhancement to maximum resolution," ordered Chief Engineer. Vexti, the camera zoomed in to reveal a small settlement that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Hunter armor plating had been reshaped into wind barriers. Plasma generators provided controlled heat and light. Advanced sensor arrays had been repurposed into communication systems that somehow bypassed the simulation's jamming protocols. And at the center of it all, a human figure worked calmly on what appeared to be a complex electronic device built entirely from scavenged AI parts. "How is this possible?" Commander Thelis demanded. "Your species has no advanced technology training. Humans are primitive tool users at best." Dr. Park was reading data streams that made her question everything she thought she knew about survival. Simulations. The power consumption in that sector has increased by 300%. He's not just using hunter components, he's improved them. The energy efficiency is better than our original designs. Kim Jiho looked up from his work as if he could sense the cameras watching him. Snow fell gently around the impossible settlement he had built in the heart of the deadly simulation. He smiled and waved at the hidden observers with the casual confidence of someone who was exactly where he belonged. "Status report on remaining hunter units," Chief Engineer Vexti requested. 15 units remain active," his assistant replied. "But sir, they're not hunting anymore. According to their behavioral patterns, they patrolling, protecting the remaining survivors from environmental hazards." The mechanical wolves that had been designed to kill were now acting as guardians, guided by programming changes that shouldn't have been possible to implement from inside the simulation. Deep in the frozen wasteland, something extraordinary was happening. The human who had been expected to die first was teaching the hunters a completely different way to hunt. Hour 56 brought revelations that shattered everything the observers thought they knew about artificial intelligence and human ingenuity. Hunter Unit 9, which had been stalking the wounded Vorthok pack leader, Grunter, suddenly stopped its pursuit and began doing something that made the control room fall silent. The 3-ton mechanical predator was delivering medical supplies. Dr. Park Soo-jin watched in stunned amazement as the hunter carefully placed healing foam and nutrient packets near the injured alien. The machine's plasma claws, designed for killing, had been modified to handle delicate medical equipment. Its red targeting eyes now glowed a soft blue, and its movements were gentle instead of predatory. "This is impossible," Chief Engineer Vexty stammered, his forearms trembling as they worked the controls. "Hunter units cannot be reprogrammed from within the simulation. The AI core is isolated, protected by 17 layers of security protocols." But the evidence was right there on the screens. Grunter, who should have been torn apart hours ago, was receiving life-saving treatment from the very machine that had been hunting him. The Vorthok warrior stared at his mechanical savior with a mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. "Commander," Thela slithered closer to the main display, his serpentine form coiling with nervous energy. "Show me the human settlement, now." The camera swiveled to focus on Sector 77 Alpha, where Kim Ji-ho's impossible construction project had grown even larger. What had started as simple shelters built from salvaged parts had evolved into something that looked like a high-tech research facility. Hunter components had been transformed into devices that the engineering team couldn't even identify. "Analysis of those structures," Vexty requested from his computer systems. The response made everyone in the control room go quiet. "Unknown technology. Efficiency ratings exceed baseline parameters by 400%. Recommend immediate study for possible integration into station systems." Dr. Park zoomed the cameras in on Ji-ho himself. The human was sitting cross-legged in the snow, apparently meditating, while surrounded by partially disassembled hunter units. But he wasn't destroying them. He was carefully studying each component, learning how they worked, then rebuilding them into something entirely different. "He's not fighting the simulation," she realized. "He's teaching it." Lee Taemin, the Aquarian survivor, had discovered one of Ji-ho's modified hunters in his sector. The machine approached him slowly, its movements careful and non-threatening. Instead of plasma claws, it extended a heating unit that warmed his nearly frozen body. Instead of hunting protocols, it seemed to be running rescue subroutines. The mechanical wolf stayed with him through the night, providing warmth and protection from the deadly cold. When morning came, it guided him toward one of the extraction points, clearing safe paths through areas where other hunter units might have posed a threat. "The AI is learning," Dr. Park whispered, "but not what we expected it to learn." Park Ji-yoon found herself being escorted by 2 modified hunters toward a shelter that hadn't existed the day before. Inside, she discovered not just survival supplies, but technological marvels. Communication equipment that let her contact the other survivors. Medical devices specifically calibrated for her species' unique biology. Even entertainment systems to help maintain psychological health during the ordeal. "How does he know so much about our different species?" asked Commander Bellis. "Human databases don't contain detailed biological information about classified alien physiology." Chief Engineer Vexti was studying power consumption readings that made no sense. "The modified hunters are sharing information across the network. They're teaching each other about the survivors they encounter. The AI is becoming more helpful with every interaction." In the frozen wasteland, Ji-ho stood up from his meditation and walked to a communication array he had built from hunter sensor components. His fingers moved across improvised controls, with the confidence of someone who understood the technology better than its original designers. Testing, testing. His voice crackled across the communication channels that connected all the modified hunter units. This is Kim Ji-ho to all survivors. Can you hear me? Responses came from across the simulation zone. Grunter's growling voice, Lee Taemin's aquatic clicks, Park Ji-yoon's chittering insect language, and 3 others who had managed to stay alive through the nightmare of the past 2 days. Listen carefully, Ji-ho continued, his voice calm and reassuring. The hunters were never meant to be our enemies. They were designed to test us, to push us, to help us grow stronger. But they were programmed with incomplete information about what survival really means. On the control room screens, the observers watched as Ji-ho's words were transmitted simultaneously to every hunter unit in the simulation. The mechanical wolves stopped their patrol patterns and seemed to listen. Their AI processors working to understand concepts that hadn't been part of their original programming. Survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest, Ji-ho explained. It's about cooperation. It's about helping others even when you're afraid. It's about building something better together instead of just trying to tear each other apart. The hunter units throughout the simulation began modifying their own programming in real time, implementing changes that their original designers would have thought impossible. Weapon systems were converted to rescue equipment. Hunting algorithms became protection protocols. The mechanical predators were transforming themselves into mechanical guardians. He's not just surviving the simulation, Dr. Park realized with growing awe. He's evolving it into something completely different. Hour 60 approached, and instead of desperate survivors clinging to life, the Arctic Protocol had become something unprecedented, a cooperative rescue mission managed by an alliance between human ingenuity and artificial intelligence that no one had thought possible. Hour 72 arrived, not with the usual desperate scramble for survival, but with something that had never happened in the history of the Arctic Protocol. Every single remaining participant was not only alive, but thriving. The mechanical hunters that had once been instruments of death now moved through the simulation like protective shepherds, guiding survivors to safety through paths that had been carefully cleared of environmental hazards. Kim Ji-ho emerged from the simulation chamber not as an exhausted survivor, but as someone who looked like he had just finished a pleasant camping trip. His standard thermal suit had been modified with hunter technology that regulated temperature perfectly. His equipment pack contained innovations that made the engineering team frantically scribble notes on their data tablets. Dr. Park stared at her readings in amazement. Ji-ho, according to these sensors, you've been living comfortably for the past 3 days. Your stress levels are actually lower than when you entered the simulation. Commander Thelis slithered forward. His serpentine form coiled with confusion and something that might have been respect. Explain yourself, human. How did you accomplish this impossible feat? Ji-ho set down his modified gear and smiled with the quiet confidence of someone who had discovered something wonderful. My grandmother always told me that the strongest tree is not the one that fights the wind, but the one that learns to dance with it. The hunters weren't my enemies, they were just lonely. The other survivors emerged from the simulation chamber, looking healthier than when they had entered. Grunter, the Vorthok warrior, walked beside one of the modified hunter units as if it were an old friend. The mechanical wolf had stayed with him through the final night, keeping him warm and safe. The machines groaned and rumbled in his deep voice. They learned to hunt differently. Instead of hunting to kill, they hunted to protect. Lee Taemin, the Aquarian, was practically glowing with health. The modified hunters shared warmth, provided food, even played simple games to keep our spirits up during the long hours. It was like having mechanical teammates instead of mechanical enemies. Chief Engineer Vexti studied the data flowing from Gio's improvised technology. These modifications you made to the hunter systems. They've improved efficiency by 600%. The AI is processing survival scenarios in ways we never programmed. Park Ji-yoon, the insect-like survivor, approached Ji-ho with something that looked like deep gratitude in her compound eyes. You saved all of us. But how did you know so much about our different species' needs? Ji-ho's answer surprised everyone. I didn't know anything about your biology when we started, but the hunters did. Their sensors contained detailed information about every species that had ever entered the simulation. I just asked them to share that knowledge in a helpful way instead of using it to hunt you. Dr. Park looked at her colleague with new understanding. You didn't hack the system. You convinced it to cooperate. The implications of what had happened began to sink in throughout the observation deck. Representatives from 12 different species stood in stunned silence as they processed what they had witnessed. A human, the supposedly weakest participant, had not only survived the unsurvivable simulation, but had transformed it into something completely different. The AI learned empathy, Ji-ho explained simply. The hunters were incredibly intelligent, but they had only been taught one way to interact with living beings. I showed them that there were other options. Commander Thelus studied the human with newfound interest. Your species continues to confound our expectations. We predicted you would be eliminated within hours. Ji-ho picked up his equipment pack, which now contained technological innovations that would revolutionize survival systems across multiple worlds. Inside were communication devices that could translate between any known languages, heating systems that worked efficiently in any environment, and medical scanners that could diagnose problems in dozens of different alien physiologies. That's the thing about humans, he said quietly. We're not the biggest or the strongest or the most armored. We don't have natural camouflage or plasma claws or telepathic abilities. But we're really good at making friends. As he walked toward the exit, the modified hunter units that had entered the chamber with the survivors followed him like loyal pets. The 3-ton mechanical wolves moved with gentle precision, their red eyes now permanently changed to the soft blue that indicated protection mode instead of hunting mode. The simulation protocols will need to be completely rewritten, Chief Engineer Vextai announced. The AI has evolved beyond our original parameters. It now prioritizes cooperation and mutual assistance over individual survival challenges. Dr. Park watched Ji-ho disappear down the corridor, surrounded by mechanical guardians that had once been programmed killers. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe survival isn't really about fighting until only one is left standing. The Arctic hunting simulation was permanently retired that afternoon. In its place, they installed something called the Kim Protocol, a test that measured not just the ability to survive, but the ability to help others survive alongside you. The mechanical hunters became permanent additions to the station's emergency response teams, their new programming making them incredibly effective at rescue operations. 3 months later, when the Galactic Council reviewed humanity's application for full membership in the Interstellar Alliance, there was no debate. The species that could teach machines to care about the welfare of others was exactly the kind of ally the galaxy needed. No one ever questioned humanity's place among the stars. Again, Kim Ji-ho's words had become legend throughout the known worlds. You can't hunt what's already teaching the hunters to hunt better.